Texans were promised relief, $100,000, then $140,000, cut from school property taxes after political standoffs and record state spending. But the truth behind those headlines? Average bills still surge past $4,000 as appraisals in cities like Austin and Houston rocket up 30 to 50%. If these so-called cuts are historic, why are homeowners protesting every year just to keep up? And who is actually writing a smaller check? The math that explains everything starts now. Every Texas property tax bill boils down to a single formula. The heart of it is simple. Appraised value minus exemptions divided by 100, then multiplied by the total local tax rate. The appraised value is what the county appraisal district says your home would sell for on January 1st. That is the number printed at the top of your notice, and it is not always what you think your house is worth. Exemptions are dollar amounts subtracted from your home's value before the tax is figured. For most homeowners, the biggest is the school homestead exemption, now set at $140,000 after the 2025 changes. Some homeowners qualify for additional exemptions, like seniors and disabled Texans. What remains after subtracting exemptions is your taxable value. Now, divide that taxable value by 100. Tax rates in Texas are quoted per $100 of value, so a rate of $2.10 means $2.10 for every $100 of taxable value. Multiply that result by the combined tax rate from every entity that taxes your property: school district, city, county, hospital district, community college, and any special districts. Each entity sets its own rate every year. Add them together and you get the total local tax rate. This final multiplication is what turns property value into the dollar amount you owe. The formula does not change, no matter how many times the legislature tweaks exemptions or rates. If the appraised value goes up, so does your bill, unless exemptions or rates fall enough to cancel the increase. That is the math behind every tax notice, no matter where you live in Texas. A single property tax bill in Texas is never just one line item. It is a stack of charges from separate local governments, each with its own authority to tax the same property. For most homeowners, the school district's share is the largest, often 50 to 60% of the total bill. But the rest comes from a mix of city, county, hospital district, community college, and sometimes special districts for things like emergency services or water. Each of these entities sets its own rate every year, and each one draws from the same rising appraised value. Take a typical bill for a home valued at $400,000 in a major metro. After the $140,000 school homestead exemption, the school portion is calculated on $260,000. At a school tax rate of $1 per $100, that is $2,600 in school taxes. But the city, county, hospital, and college districts do not apply the homestead exemption the same way, or at all. If their combined rate is $1.20 per $100, that is $4,800, calculated on the full $400,000. Add it up, and the non-school layers make up 40 to 50% of the total bill, sometimes more in fast-growing suburbs or special districts. This is why even the biggest school tax exemption cannot hold down the whole bill. When one layer shrinks, others can grow to fill the gap. The relief lawmakers promise on the school side gets diluted by dozens of local decisions. For homeowners, the only constant is the complexity, and the bottom line keeps rising. Gridlock. At the Capitol, defined Texas politics in 2023. As the regular legislative session ended in late May, lawmakers walked away without a property tax deal. The House and Senate clashed over how to deliver relief, one side pushing for school vouchers, the other for pure tax cuts. The standoff dragged on for months, with Governor Greg Abbott refusing to let the issue die. He called not one, but 3 special sessions, each with property tax relief at the top of the agenda. Each time, negotiations broke down over priorities, with public fights playing out in committee rooms and press conferences. Abbott used his leverage, threatening vetoes and publicly blaming lawmakers for the stalemate. The deadlock finally broke in October, during the 3rd special session. After days of marathon negotiations, the House and Senate reached a compromise. Senate Bill 2, passed on October 25th, delivered what Abbott called the largest school property tax cut in state history. He signed the bill into law on November 21st, 2023, surrounded by legislative leaders and cameras. The centerpiece was a dramatic increase in the school district homestead exemption, from $40,000 to $100,000. For the average homeowner, this meant an extra $60,000 of their home's value was shielded from school property taxes. Alongside the exemption, the state compressed school tax rates by buying them down with billions of dollars from a record surplus. The legislature promised that the state would backfill lost school funding, keeping districts whole. Abbott claimed victory, calling the $100,000 exemption a game changer for Texas homeowners. But the ink was barely dry before new appraisal notices began landing in mailboxes, setting the stage for the next round of battles. Governor Abbott signed Senate Bill 4 in May 2025, raising the school district homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. This $40,000 increase was not just a legislative tweak. It was the centerpiece of the year's tax relief agenda, pitched as a bold new promise to Texas homeowners. For seniors and disabled Texans, the package added even larger exemption increases, aiming to ease the squeeze on those most vulnerable to rising bills. But the relief did not become permanent until November 4th, 2025. On that day, Texas voters approved Proposition 13, a constitutional amendment that locked the $140,000 exemption into law for school district taxes. The campaign leading up to the vote was filled with high-profile endorsements and confident predictions. Lawmakers and the governor pointed to the measure as proof that Texas was delivering the most generous property tax cut in state history. Behind the headlines, the mechanics were clear. The state would use its record budget, surplus, billions of dollars in extra revenue from sales taxes and oil and gas production to buy down local school tax rates. The goal was to shield homeowners from the full force of rising appraisals, promising average savings of several $100s a year on the school portion of the tax bill. The legislature appropriated more than $50 billion for the 2025 to 2027 cycle to keep this promise, with $3.9 billion set aside for the new exemption alone. Every dollar cut from local school taxes would be replaced by state funds, funneled directly to districts to keep their budgets whole. The message was simple. With Senate Bill 4 and Proposition 13, Texas had doubled down on property tax relief, using the power of a historic surplus to deliver what politicians called lasting savings. For homeowners, the expectation was set: bigger exemptions, lower school tax rates, and a direct line from state coffers to the local tax bill. In Houston, a typical homeowner opens their appraisal notice and sees a number that has jumped by 40% in just 2 years. This is not rare. Across Texas metros, appraised values have surged by 30 to 50% since 2023. That spike turns the annual appraisal protest into a necessity, not an option. The Texas Comptroller's protest checklist lays out what is required: 3 comparable sales, fresh photos, closing documents, and a clear explanation of why the appraised value is too high. The deadline, May 15th, forces thousands to scramble, gathering evidence and blocking out time for hearings. For many, it is a stressful, unpaid job that comes around every spring. As one Houston homeowner puts it, if you don't protest, you pay for everyone who does. Even chief appraisers acknowledge the strain, saying, "We're seeing record numbers of protests as values climb." The system demands vigilance, and the cost is measured in hours lost as much as dollars owed. Ana Ramirez opens her new property tax bill and sees the numbers in black and white. The school portion drops by several $100s, just as promised. But the total at the bottom is barely changed. A small dip already erased by higher appraised value and increases from other taxing entities. For Ana, the relief is real, but so are the limits. On paper, she is a winner. In practice, the math barely lets her catch her breath. Meanwhile, the state promise to keep schools whole depends on billions in sales tax revenue and oil revenue. One school district chief financial officer put it plainly: if the economy slows, our funding gets squeezed. The backfill is only as strong as the next surplus. Homeowners with pricier houses see the biggest dollar savings. Renters who never qualify for homestead exemptions watch from the sidelines. The system delivers for some, but leaves many exposed if the state's windfall fades. Today, billions in relief cannot outpace soaring appraisals and fragmented tax systems. As state surpluses dry up and home values keep climbing, the burden only shifts, not disappears. In Texas, real change means confronting the system, not just the symptoms. The question now: who is willing to demand it?